All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with William Odhams. William, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Great to be here and looking forward to our chat.
Same, same. So I gotta tell you, you and I we connected. I don't know when was it when we had our first conversation. It's been a couple weeks and stuff.
Yeah, about a month
And
ago. Yeah,
yeah, and
over the summer. Yeah.
I was just really impressed, and I have been looking forward to doing this podcast interview and stuff. And so I just want to dig right in with you, and I want to start by just kind of finding out some of your backstory and stuff because I know you weren't always an entrepreneur, but
No,
how did you get into this world? How did you even become an entrepreneur in the first place, William?
good question. I would say it kind of flashes back about 10 years ago.
Okay.
I was a forest firefighter or a wildland firefighter at the time. And amusingly, it was my birthday over the summer, and I had asked my boss at the same time, like, "Hey, do you have any words of advice for me?" And he's like, "Let me think on that." And like several hours later, he came back. I didn't think that he actually would. He did come back, and he's
Wow.
like, "Got something for you." And he's like, "This is a quote that was told to me a long time ago, and I think it will serve you well." And I was around 24 at the time, and he said, "A successful person chooses their own problems." And he then went like, and we went on to explain, problems are a part of life, they're unavoidable, but someone who is maybe more successful is someone who not only gets to choose their problems, but kind of can navigate the world accordingly. And that kind of threw me down an interesting wormhole because I wasn't really sure what I was doing. That was a great summer job. It was, paying bills and stuff, but I didn't really have a lot of direction. I was considering becoming a structural firefighter, but that didn't really feel aligned. And so as soon as the season ended, I was sitting at home and I can't quite remember what it was. It was maybe a podcast or something that I had seen. And I saw this invitation to go to London, England for an event called the Millionaire Business School. It was hosted by an entrepreneur named Peter Sage. And it was funny because I asked my mom who was sitting across me, I was like, "Wouldn't it be funny if I just booked a ticket to England and went to a conference?" And she's like, "Sure, 100%." Like, didn't really take it at face value. And at that moment, I clicked like book, no idea what I was doing. And I remember emailing them after I booked it, being like, "Do I need to have a business in order to show up?" They're like, "No, not at all. Like, just come on, you'll learn lots." And that was kind of the beginning of getting exposed to this whole world of entrepreneurship that I didn't
Wow.
know what I didn't know, but I went there. And just from seeing people at all different stages of business, I was speaking with millionaires and people who'd already exited companies, and they gave me a lot of valuable advice. And the one that I think I kind of grabbed to is, if you don't yet have your own business idea, go work for a small startup, learn sales, and see how far that will take you. And so I literally came back home from the event, applied to 20 different jobs, got a call back like later that day, answered the phone, went and met a young entrepreneur who was building a food distribution company that was serving local food products. And I got hired as a area manager and started being a bit of a traveling salesman and did my first cold call and all of that. And that was
Wow.
like really like the kind of what caught the bug. And I was like, "Oh, there's different ways to play this game." Not, I was really exposed to maybe traditional methods,
Mhm.
go to school, get a degree, get a job, work up the ladder. But I was like, "Oh, there's ways of actually creating different types of outcomes and solving different types of problems." And so I kind of started to explore it from there. And that kind of led deeper down the rabbit hole for me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So now let's fast forward a little bit. What do you do today?
So I guess the world of sales started to kind of naturally fit with my skill set. I had no idea that I could get like paid to just talk to people and help them solve problems. And that kind of created this snowball effect that led me to a lot of areas, mainly started working online with other business owners who were growing and scaling their businesses because I still hadn't conceptualized my own idea. And in doing so, I got a pretty good reputation at following up with leads and not burning the bridge and maintaining the relationship beyond that initial interaction. And that actually started to realize that, I would close a certain number of people off the initial interaction, but I would
Mhm.
pull 40% more deal flow just from keeping in touch with people and seeing actually
Following up.
whether or
Yeah.
not they'd achieved their goals. And then every subsequent business I got on to work with, I realized they didn't have a lot of these systems. And I was doing something that was a little bit unique or different or systematic compared to some of my peers, which then kind of bred into its own business model where I started installing these systems into different types of businesses, creating a bit more of like the back end and the revenue operation side of things, and teamed up with a business partner who are now a business partner of mine who had operations background. And together we took the sales back operations and the data side of things and combined it into a business where we are now helping companies really get clear on their data, make faster, more effective decisions, and unify things so that everyone can play at a higher level.
Wow. How do your clients find out about you guys, William?
So we've been growing steadily off referrals, word of mouth, and doing good business, compounded over time. A lot of them have come from, yeah, just different types of sources of building trust with clients and building. I had a lot of connections with other sales professionals and sales managers, and
Mhm.
that helped me get my foot in the door into a lot of businesses that needed help with some of their systems at the same time.
Okay, very good. So, what is an example? And you don't have to name names or anything, but what's an example of a result you guys have helped get for a client that you're just incredibly proud of, William?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like it kind of aligns with our one of our company values that me and my business partner just naturally kind of are it's who extension of who we are, which is our intention was to leave things better than we found it, regardless of kind of what shook out on the front end. And in one circumstance, actually one of our beginning clients, just as we were picking up momentum, he was a scaling entrepreneur and had a really solid course in data engineering and helping people transition into that type of career. And what we ended up doing is not only growing his company from about 150K a month to now over 800, 900K a month, but the way that we did that was almost looking at what was bleeding. So, like, yes, they had a lot of good straight line processes, but what I'm most proud of is we end up putting in a series of different workflows and different campaigns that over time has now actually pulled over $500,000 in cash just to kind of like ignite these leads that have been dropped off or forgotten about, but still wanted to kind of change their circumstance. And that was kind of a testament of all the systems working together. Because in order to do that, we needed to have the data that showed which ones were kind of getting stagnant. We needed to have the
Mhm.
strategy to kind of revive them. We needed to have the team culture, understanding that everyone's marching to the same drum beat. And like everything started to kind of move in this nice little ecosystem so that everything is kind of working in sync, kind of like
Yeah.
a big garden as an analogy I often use for some of these systems that we build out is everything needs to thrive and everything needs a slightly different care plan at the same time.
Yeah. So do you find, William, that, because from what you shared, you made the comment that you can get like 40% more revenue just by following up with people.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you start serving a new client, that if they haven't been doing this follow up, that there is pretty much like there's like this immediate opportunity to capture revenue that's sitting right there available in their business, and that's that one of the first things you guys focus on with a new client?
Absolutely. And it's kind of a give and a take. So like that's actually part of a lot of the client acquisition strategy is I get them to take a quick little calculator quiz of how much money is likely sitting trapped in their CRM right now. That
Okay.
brings awareness to the fact that there might be some drop-offs in places that are left unnurtured. But then the challenge that we have to overcome is there's usually a reason why that drop off is happening, or there's a lack of infrastructure to effectively reignite some of these people without burning the bridges. And so depending on what sort of systems they have in place, either we can start right away with reviving some of those, or other times we make a little bit of some overhauling and some different segmentation
Okay.
so that then we can kind of be more effective. Because the last thing I want to do is just put everybody in one bucket and say, hey, do you want to go now? Because that actually does more harm than good. We want to create layers of gray so that it's kind of combining bulk actions with personalization. We kind of want to find that happy medium so that people feel like they are getting genuine connection, but we're also able to do it in a time effective manner.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. So in most of these cases, are you using multiple mediums like say like email, text messaging, outbound calling? Are you using a lot of different ways to communicate?
Yeah, it's like all different ways to get to the core of the onion, right? And like the other thing is it by using different mediums that enables one to not be kind of perceived maybe as annoying or pesky, because if you're just hitting it on one angle, that might kind of shut down someone's receptivity. Whereas if you're kind of creating some variance and you're always adding value in a way that is natural and authentic, that's where I find you might get traction on one medium over another, and then looking at the signals to start adapting the strategy. But ideally, yeah, you're going to want to kind of use a combination of mediums to give yourself the highest likelihood of reigniting or reconnecting with these people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's definitely no hiding the fact how passionate you are about this, William, and stuff. And so I want to switch gears just a little bit now that we've got some context set.
Yeah.
Um, and so I want to ask, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your
Yeah.
experience around this topic of relationships, William.
Yeah. I would say it's almost like to me, as soon as you asked that question, I almost imagined a bit of a staircase here. And there's
Okay.
probably three distinct stairs
Okay.
that I think have now led me to this place where I'm able to have the impact and kind of the opportunity in front of me that I'm really
Okay.
looking forward to serving on. I guess the first one is, I went through a lot of health challenges after my dad passed away. Shortly after I mentioned at the beginning of this that I got into entrepreneurship, I had to kind of take a bit of a hiatus because my dad got very
Oh,
sick. And after that kind of chapter, I was at home with adrenal fatigue, laryngitis, and something else, couldn't really speak. And I came across a webinar. And this webinar was talking about, hey, you can improve your sales skills and make money online. And at the time, I didn't have a lot else going for me, but I said, hey, what's the worst that can happen? I can put 90 minutes of my focus in here and see what happens. And sure enough, it was almost too good to be true. But then when I started looking up some of these LinkedIn job postings, I was like, oh, these opportunities really exist. And so I kind of convinced myself to utilize my savings and kind of invest in this program and fully commit to that direction. And lo and behold, within about 4 months, I was making more part-time working online in sales than I was working 60 hours a week inside a gym as an assistant manager. And
wow.
so that kind of opened up my world to the fact that, there is different levels to this game. There are opportunities to not take the traditional route and start to kind of get involved in these higher 7, 8 figure businesses. So that was kind of the one turning point of like being
Okay.
able to, just happen to subscribe to a webinar and take a course that kind of changed the paradigm of what was
Yeah.
possible. And then from there, I rose quite quickly in that one group, but it is kind of that concept of like, if you're what is it, almost like a big fish in a small pond, right? Like you're kind of limited in growth. And
Yeah.
so I realized, and I ended up messaging this guy named Matt Ryder, who ran a sales agency at the time. And he was looking for sales reps because he was growing his business. And what it was funny is I came onto this call very sure of myself, explaining I was closing at a good rate. And he pretty much said, oh, that's it. And I was like, oh, like prior to that interaction, I was getting a lot of validation that I was pretty good at what I did. And he literally just said that was like the minimum standard to be considered, which kind of opened my eyes to being like, oh, again, there are levels to this game and there are bigger pools to swim in. And lo and behold, I kind of then transitioned into getting more down to that avenue, which not only gave me more experience, increased my skill set, but gave me opportunities to kind of work on even bigger projects than I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
previously. So that kind of sharpened my sword, gave me a lot more kind of clarity on what to do, what not to do. Because when you're a full time sales professional working in some of these fast paced businesses, you get exposed to a lot of circumstances and situations, even though you're not the business owner. So
Mhm.
like that was really helpful for kind of almost taking notes. Like when I have my own business, I should avoid this pitfall or make sure I have this
Mhm.
in place, even if I am a smaller fish. And one of those projects specifically was working for a very successful real estate agent named Ryan Serhant. And we were growing his online branding program. And he tells this story of how he followed up with this woman when he first got into real estate for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And that ROI of keeping his foot in the door for 8 years ended up getting him like a $10 million sale. And again, it was that whole seed being planted, being like, oh, I've been told to follow up with people for maybe 14 days or 30 days. Like
Yeah.
no one ever talked about 7 to 8 years. And that kind of showed me
Right.
like, oh, again, there are different levels to professionalism, to kind of having these systems in place, to building a genuine relationship with someone that lasts over years, not expecting anything in return. But then lo and behold, when they are finally ready to make a decision, you're the only person that's usually been doing that. And
Yeah.
so I kind of really started to, he kind of raised the standard again of what was possible for myself, to being like, oh, like I shouldn't give up so easily. There are definitely more people that I can keep nurturing and keep kind of building towards. And when I was out for dinner with him, he kind of said, like, at the time I was selling to a lot of real estate agents, he said, they are getting kind of like a hard time from their buyers, their sellers, their family, their business owners, their brokers. He's like, your best bet is to just be a little bit of their cheerleader and their champion. And so I started to realize, oh, like the best way to kind of follow up with someone is to kind of take a genuine interest in what they are trying to achieve. Don't make it about you, make it about them. One, because they like to talk about themselves. And secondly, so many other people are like, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done this yet? You're the person being like, hey, that's awesome that you did this. How's that going? Keep
Yeah.
climbing the hill. Right.
Yeah.
And like that actually kept me in a way that stopped me from being like annoying, perceived as annoying by that person.
Mhm.
Because who's really gonna, flog away someone that's literally just supporting them, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
kind of was what I realized. I was like, that's the way to keep your foot in the door, is genuinely take a vested interest in their goals and send them things that help them be more successful down an avenue. And like that kind of enabled myself to develop a lot of my systems that I now use in other businesses today. So without some of these, those three little staircase,
Yeah.
I would not have found the online world of business. I would not have been exposed to these bigger clients, and I would not have seen that there are different standards to play the game in terms of relationship mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that is some really great stuff right there. And some powerful lessons that you've learned along the way, and that the follow-up really never ends. In especially when we like just when we genuinely care about
Mm-hmm.
the people that we serve, why would we ever quit following up with them?
Yeah.
And you're right, that how many years later was it that he got the big deal? Because it was like,
7 or 8 years. And
yeah,
while I was working for him, I ended up having somebody that I think was a year and 3 quarters, almost 2 years. And so it was like I was on that project for about 3 years. And so there was someone that I spoke with when I was at the very beginning of that ended up kind of coming across the line way downstream. And there's an interesting kind of like lesson here too, is like typically you're not getting worse at what you do. So usually you're only getting better, more confident, more certain. You're developing more skill sets. So like as long as you have kept in good rapport with that person and not given up and not folded, your ability to get them closer to the green light here actually should be higher, right? And that's kind of the interesting thing that I would tell people that were just beginning in their journey, is like, if you're not as good at what you do, then follow up is probably more of an important skill set to develop, because as you get better at your skill, your likelihood of then being able to live to fight another day and get them back on the line increases, right? And that was kind of where it works both ways too in terms of networking. Is I have met a lot of great people that I really bonded with their values and what they were about, but maybe at the time we didn't have business opportunities that were aligned, but I trusted in what they were doing as a human, and they
Yeah.
know that I'm a good person.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, a few years later, they're like, oh, now I'm running this company. I need this. I'm like,
Yeah.
look at that. I'm now doing this, and our pathways are running parallel now. And so
Yes.
it's about kind of almost like building that muscle and that skill of like consistently realizing that if you're a good person and you see the good in another person and you realize they're going places, like it's worth keeping tabs on where that direction
Yes.
might kind of take you over time.
Absolutely. And I want to add to that. And I don't usually do this on an interview, but I'm going to add to that because it's so doggone valuable. You alluded to this. We keep getting better at
Yeah.
doing what we do, And so I have relationships in my life and relationships in my entrepreneurial life that span back to 30 years. And I think of this one friend of mine, Travis, that I met him in 2015. And he was really good at doing what he did back then at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty good at doing what I do. But you know what? That was 2015. So that's been 10 years ago now. He's gotten far better at doing what he does. And I've gotten far better at doing what I do. And there's a lot more opportunity today than there was 10 years ago because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like as you talked about, people change gears and stuff several times throughout their career. I'm on kind of like the third iteration of my entrepreneurial career right now and stuff.
Right.
And when you have relationships that span back so far, and now you're doing this new thing, especially when you start getting it dialed in and getting some really good traction and stuff, you can circle back to people that you've had relationships with years ago that, like, what I was doing back then didn't apply, but today it certainly does,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and there's I can tell you there's some big opportunities today because of the relationships that I've had all these years, and that it just continues to expand. The opportunities do. And so
I think it's also important to realize that that started back then and now is equating to something giant now,
yeah,
but it's also the impression that you leave people with. If the impression they leave you with is very transactional and you were just trying to get something out of that relationship
yeah,
and their
yeah,
interaction, they're likely not going to think of you a couple years, 5 years down the road. But if you have, you did whatever you had that conversation and you realized it wasn't going to go the distance that day, but you still showed up in a way that was genuine, authentic, and kind of interest of what they were trying to achieve, you leave this impression with people that keeps the door open
yeah,
for whatever might possibly be happening down the road. And so, like, when I'm teaching people about how I follow up, it's like it actually starts on that first call. It's not that I'm always good at knowing what to say downstream. It's that I left somebody with the right intention. And I even told them that, hey, like, are you open to having a continued relationship? And
yeah.
when they agree on it, now the door is open. They think of me in a neutral way, or at least a
That's
valuable way. And so that kind of allows me to then slide back in
that's
later
yeah.
on downstream as well.
That's right. I mean, when we give people a good experience and we have conversations, I'm this naturally curious guy. And I love talking with entrepreneurs too. And so, when I ask questions of entrepreneurs, and I do that because I'm genuinely curious, like a question I love asking entrepreneurs is, hey, what are you working on right now that you are most jazzed about?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to elicit a response. And they're
Yeah.
going to start talking, and they're probably going to get pretty animated because they're jazzed about whatever it is that they're working on. And
Yeah.
then when I ask them more questions around that based on what they're sharing with me and stuff,
Yeah.
not waiting for my turn to talk about what I do or anything like that, just having a conversation with them, asking them questions, asking clarifying questions based on what they share and stuff, because I'm genuinely interested in knowing about what they do. And
Yeah.
I love hearing about the challenges they're up against, the problems they're dealing with, the opportunities that they're trying to take advantage of. And I always default to, who do I know who might be able to help with this, and
Mm-hmm.
just be of service to them. But regardless, that whole experience people don't get to experience that much because people are thinking about, well, what can I get from this? Or I want to talk about
Yeah.
my thing and what I do.
Yeah.
And when we give them the experience of being seen, heard, and understood, that's what makes them like, man, can I
Yeah.
stay in touch with you? Can I, yeah, you can stay in touch with me because they gave you gave them such a great experience,
hmm hmm
So
It's funny. It's reminding me actually of a story that my dad used to tell me growing up. Like I never really connected this to like maybe who I am today or kind of how I operate, but you're just kind of actually kind of gluing some things together for me as he used to explain that, when there would be a dinner party and you would go out and kind of mingle with all these people, the most interesting person in the room, everyone asked later on, it's like, oh, what do you know about Kevin? And not many people could actually explain who Kevin was, but everyone thought he was the most interesting person in the room. And it wasn't because everything that he shared, it
yeah,
was because he was the one sitting there with the ears open, asking questions, engaging people, and showing that charisma that he was really just listening and
yeah,
making people feel understood. Therefore, they perceived him as extremely interesting,
yeah,
mainly because, as we learn in sales and business, is a lot of these things are a mirror, right? And so when you are giving someone that holding up that mirror of optimism and positivity and showing them that you're genuinely kind of interested, that actually enables you to be perceived as interesting,
yeah,
right? And it kind of totally resonates with where you're coming from
yeah,
as well. And I think that I brought that naturally into how I like to do sales because similar to you, I'm Mr. Curious and just want to see what people are up to over
yeah,
there. And I'm grateful working online that I've talked with people in different industries, different cultures, different geographic zones. Like to me, it's like one of my little affirmations is I learn something in every conversation,
yeah.
right? And that's either something about myself, something about another person, something about communication in general. But this is just such an open playing field where all the information's there if you choose to listen
Yeah,
uh, as well.
absolutely. Well, William, I want to thank you for just taking the time to have this conversation today. This has been really powerful. And for anybody that's listening to this going, man, you know what? Kev, for one, I just really love William. I love who he is. I love how he shows up. And some of the stuff that you guys talked about made me think, well, maybe I should be talking with William. Maybe he might be able to help us out a little bit, or maybe I know somebody else that I want to connect William with. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks, William?
Yeah, so like either definitely come through any of my social channels on Instagram or Facebook or
Okay,
LinkedIn. It's just my first name and my last name. And then we can go to the business page, which is Volve Ventures or tryvolve.com. And
okay,
there is actually that free calculator online where you can put in real numbers from your business that will quickly spit out an estimate of what's probably sitting in your pipeline. And then I'd
okay,
be happy to chat with you further on different ways to extract it if it was aligned.
perfect. Any last thing you feel led to share, William, before we call it a wrap?
No, I was just really grateful for the opportunity. And I think it's so interesting that really, like when I'm in sales, I don't feel like I'm having a sales
Yeah,
conversation. And that's what I've been told by other people. But like, that's what I would hope for everybody is when you're just having a conversation, sure, there might be an underlying structure to it. But when you're able to show up that it is more about the relationship, and that's what leads to the sales, the success, and everything else kind of from that. And that's why I was excited to have that conversation and reach out to you because it seemed like that was what you were kind of
yeah,
naturally the vibe you were putting out as well, right? And so I felt kind of akin to that from the get go.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, and I'm excited to get it out there and share it with a lot of other folks. So, thanks again, William.
Grateful. All right, Kevin, have a good one. Thank you.
You too.